All right, well, I'm really excited about this week's lesson. This is really more like a course. There's so much information, so many practice materials and all of that that go with this week's lesson. We're going to be talking about the pentatonic scales, major pentatonic scale and minor pentatonic scale. And by the end of this, you're going to have a full understanding of what they sound like, how you use them when you improvise, what all these patterns mean. Just really answering all the questions you've ever had about them. At least I hope so. So in this video, we're going to cover everything that I talked about, all the background information. If you like the extra materials, which are MP3 jam tracks so that you can practice some of this material, there's tablature, there's PDF sheets that have the patterns broken down. All of those extra materials are available at activemelody.com. Go to the weekly lessons page and do a search for EP436. All right, so where do these pentatonic scales come from? Well, penta means 5, and the pentatonic scales are 5-note scales, and they come from the major scale. Believe it or not, it's the good old major scale, do, re, mi, right? So if we look at the A major scale, for example, and we put a number to each of those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, each of those notes, obviously once you get here, you're back to 1 again. You can eliminate 2 of those notes, so the 4th and the 7th interval, 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll get rid of that one, 5, 6, 7, we'll get rid of that one, and then you're left with the major pentatonic scale. So if I take out the 4th and 7th interval out of the major scale, I'm left with the major pentatonic scale. So now it sounds like this. That would be the A major pentatonic scale. The same is true for the minor scale, or the natural minor scale. So if we take a look at A minor, that's the A minor scale. Now let's take 2 notes out of that scale. We'll take out the 2nd and the 6th interval. 1, 2, we'll get rid of that one. 3, 4, 5, 6, we'll get rid of that one. And what you're left with then is the A minor pentatonic scale. So it sounds like this. So that's where they come from. But then the question is, wait, why would you get rid of notes from either of those scales, from the major or minor? The reason for that is those notes can be problematic when you're improvising in the key of a song. Let me say that again, because this is kind of the heart of why the pentatonic scale is so important. When you're improvising, playing along with something and just sort of making it up on the spot, and there can be lots of chords that are happening, those notes that we eliminated can potentially clash with the chords, but if we get rid of them, somebody realized this along the way, if you just get rid of them and you're left with just the sweet notes that work, those notes are going to work no matter what chord is playing, as long as you're staying in the key of the song. And that's how the pentatonic scales work and why they're so popular. I don't even have to have heard the song before. As long as I know what key the song is in, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute, as long as I know what key the song is in, I can just play any of those notes and they're going to work. And we don't have to worry about what the chords are or try and follow the chord changes or any of that. But you can just stay in a pentatonic scale and it's going to work no matter what you play. Let me demonstrate this so it makes sense. So the jam track is playing now in the key of A, and these are all major chords. So this is in a major key, which means I can play either major or minor pentatonic scale on top of that. It just depends on the mood I want to create. I don't care what the chords are, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to stay in the key of the song. So watch this. This is major pentatonic scale. We'll start with that. A major pentatonic. Hear how happy it sounds? Now watch this. Minor pentatonic. We'll go back to major. Go back to minor. Hear the difference? Happy, more sad. And it just depends on which one I choose, if I want to go major or minor. All right, so I can already anticipate some of the questions out there. Somebody out there is going, so wait a minute, you can play the major and the minor pentatonic scale over the same chords? And here's how that works, the formula for that. So pay attention to this. This is a big deal. If the song is in a major key, like the one we were just playing over, then you can use the major pentatonic scale or the minor pentatonic scale. It just depends on the mood you want to create. And that's what I was doing. I was showing you that if I use the major pentatonic scale, it sounded happy. But if I played the minor pentatonic scale over those same major chords, it sounded sad or more bluesy. However, if the song is in a minor key, so you've got minor chords driving it as your tonal center, for example, then you can only use the minor pentatonic scale. So basically, to summarize, if the song is in a major key, you can use major or minor pentatonic scale, but if the song is in a minor key, you can only use the minor pentatonic scale. All right, so now that we've covered the background information and we've talked about what the pentatonics sound like, let's talk about how to find it on our fretboard. So we're going to be talking about the minor pentatonic scale first. And when we talk about pentatonic scales, there's patterns. There's 5 patterns that are often talked about. And these patterns are just regions of the fretboard. Sometimes they're called boxes. But really all the patterns are groupings of those same 5 notes we've already discussed. So when we talk about the A minor pentatonic scale, for example, it sounds like this. Right? So that could be like one zone or one pattern. There's another one up here, same notes. Right? That would be another pattern. Then there's another one up here. So that's what these patterns are. They're just different areas to play those same 5 notes. A lot of it is repurposed though. Obviously you can get into other octaves and things, but that's really what's going on there. And so there's 5 patterns, but there's also 5 notes in the caged system, C-A-G-E-D. And so what I like to do is I like to connect the patterns of the pentatonic scale to the notes of the caged system. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I'm mentioning caged, I'll put a link to a lesson up on the screen right now. You can go to activemelody.com and do search for that lesson number and learn what the caged system is. But basically, 5 patterns of the minor pentatonic scale, right? But 5 is a lot, and there's really only 3 that I think are the big ones, the ones that cover 80% of what you need to know. There's 2 that we can just sort of push to the side. We're going to be able to play the same notes with these 3 that we could with the 5, but I think it makes it a little easier. So let's learn those 3. This is just my little system for this, but I think it makes it a lot easier to learn. So we're going to start with pattern 1. This is the big one. This is going to be your home base. And we're going to learn this in the key of A. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find our A chord using the E shape. So that's where you're barring here on the 5th fret, and then these 3 fingers are making the E shape. If you were to play an E chord in first position, that's all cage system is just repurposing these first position chords. So if I were to look at that, where I'm barring there, that's going to be my root fret. So I'm going to take my index finger, put it on the 5th fret 1st string. So we have index finger, 5th fret 1st string, and then we have our pinky on the 8th fret 1st string. And now we're going to play this. We're going to play 8-5 on the 1st string, and then we're going to play 8-5 on the 2nd string. Nice and easy. Then we're going to come down to the 3rd string and play 7-5, and then watch this, 7-5, 7-5. So on strings 3, 4, and 5, we played 7-5, 7-5, 7-5, and then we come down to the 8th fret again on the 6th string, and then down to the 5th fret. And that's pattern 1 of the minor pentatonic scale, and that's where so much music comes from, is this area. All of these notes that I was playing there, just minor pentatonic scale pattern 1. So, okay, so we've got that, and a lot of you probably already knew that. All right, so that's pattern 1. Let's move into pattern 2 now. Now, I have a different way of looking at pattern 2. This is just my little system for it, but I think it's a lot easier. I think you're going to agree with me. So if pattern 1 is based off the E shape, pattern 2 is based off of this D shape. Now, in both cases here, I'm playing the A chord, but I'm using those as anchor points to connect my pentatonics to, just so I have instead of saying pattern 2, it doesn't mean anything. But if I say play the A chord using the D shape, that means something that's very specific. So if I'm up here playing this, and I look at where my middle finger is, in this case it's on the 9th fret, I can come to the fret, 1 fret right above it, which is the 10th fret, and then 1 fret right below it, which is the 8th fret on the 1st string. And that's the top part of your pattern 2. So you have 10, 8, and then you do the same thing on the 2nd string, 10, 8, and then 9th fret 3rd string. And that is what pattern 2 is to me. Just that. Now I realize the proper method would be to keep going down all 6 strings, but here's how I do it. Instead of doing it the way that you might have learned it, I think this is easier. Watch this. We're going to slide down with our middle finger back into pattern 1. Why not? You've already learned pattern 1. It's the same notes anyway. And you can walk it all the way down to here. So now I've got, right? And that makes so much more sense than trying to learn it the other way. And you can go backward. And so this is kind of like a little bridge between pattern 1 and pattern 2. And I just find that to be so much easier. Now, if you want the proper listing of all of the proper diagrams for all 5 patterns, I do have that in a PDF that's available at Active Melody. Just remember to do a search for EP436 when you go there. But we're just going to learn it that way for now. So now we've got pattern 1, pattern 2, right? And by the way, pattern 2 is where a lot of your classic Albert King, Stevie Ray Vaughan style blues comes from. That kind of stuff. Robert Cray, I think of him playing in that region a lot. Okay, pattern 1, pattern 2. We're going to skip pattern 3, and we're going to go up to pattern 4. And pattern 4, we're going to play the A chord again, but this time we're going to use the A shape. So we've used the E shape, we've used the D shape, and we're going to use the A shape. Now once we're up here, that's where you've got a bar up here on the 14th fret. I go up one more fret from that to the 15th fret first string, and we're going to learn it like this. So we have 15, 12, and then we're going to go 15, 13. And then we're going to come down to the 14th fret third string. So 15, 12, 15, 13, and then 14th fret. Now we're going to keep going, so we're going to come down to the 12th fret, and we're going to go 14, 12 again. So we have... Now watch this. From here, I'm going to slide down 2 frets, and we're going to go 10, 12, 10, 12, 10. It's a little box on all 3 strings there. So 10, 12, 10, 12, 10, 12, and slide up. So really what you can see here is you've got a box, a box, a box, and then another box here, another box here. Now we're going to offset it and play this, and then we'll come up to the first string. Now that, to me, that's really combining part of the 3rd pattern with the 4th pattern, but that is the most useful region because you can make so much music in this area. You've got all of those classic kind of Leonard Skinner style bends and things can happen up here. We're going to talk through bending, which notes you can bend as well. But this would be pattern 4 of your minor pentatonic scale, and it's connected to your A shape, E shape, D shape, and the A shape. So quick recap of what we've learned so far. We've learned the A minor pentatonic scale in 3 regions of the fretboard, and we've connected those regions to chord shapes from the cage system. So we started with the E shape. Now remember, these are all A chords, but A chord using the E shape. We had pattern 1. Then we had the D shape. We had pattern 2 connected to that. And then we had the A shape. We connected pattern 4. So now we're going to move on and we're going to introduce the major pentatonic scale. But don't freak out. It's the same shapes that we just learned. We're just going to move them down. We're just going to shift them down the fretboard a little bit. So when we played pattern 1, the good old home bass, right, for A minor pentatonic scale, we had our index finger on the 5th fret first string, and we had our pinky on the 8th fret first string. That's how we fretted that. Now, to play pattern 1 of the major pentatonic scale, we're going to put our pinky where our index finger was, 5th fret first string, and we're going to put our index finger on the 2nd fret first string. And we're going to play the same shape that we played here. So this time it's going to be 5, 2, 5, 2, and then we have 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2. That's the major pentatonic scale for A. So you can see that this is kind of a pivot. This is the connection point between the two. You have minor up here, and you have major here. And they're connected by this 5th fret. Now, if we go back to our same logic of connecting these to chord shapes, this would be connected to the G shape out of the cage system, which looks like this. Now again, we're still playing an A chord, but we're using the G shape. If you don't know the cage system, just skip that for now, but that's what's going on. And so with that, I can play the A major pentatonic scale. The same is true for the other patterns. This is why it's so easy and why guitar players and fretted instrument players in general love this. So when we come to the A minor pentatonic scale pattern 2, we're going to take that and we're going to move that down 3 frets just like we did this. 1, 2, 3. So this is pattern 2 of the major pentatonic scale. It's the same thing we did here. We just moved it down 3 frets, just like we did here. So we were here and we went 1, 2, 3 frets down. We're doing the same thing here. 1, 2, 3 frets down. You're connecting this now to the E shape. So this E shape has the minor pentatonic scale, pattern 1, and it has the major pentatonic scale, pattern 2. And this is where it starts to get really interesting because you have both of these patterns, or both of these scales, I should say, in the same region. And so now you can start to blend them. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. That's what's going on there. And then we're going to come down to pattern 4 of the major pentatonic scale. We can do the same thing. So here's pattern 4 of the minor pentatonic. We can go down 1, 2, 3 frets. And we can play it like that. Or you can just connect it in your mind to the D shape, just like we did before. And where your index or where your middle finger is on the D shape, that would be this note of the major pentatonic scale, pattern 4. And what I love about this area, and I just covered this in last week's B.B. King lesson, which was EP435, if you want to check that out, is you've got major pentatonic scale pattern 4 right there, and right beside it, your next door neighbor is minor pentatonic scale pattern 2. So there's your major, sounds kind of happy. And then right here, you've got your sad, your blues, next door neighbor. And so that's where that comes from. So hopefully this is starting to all come into focus a little bit. Major pentatonic scale, minor pentatonic scale, they're the same shapes. You just repurpose them. Now I know somebody out there is going to go, wait a minute, if this is A minor pentatonic scale and you move down here, aren't you playing like F sharp, F sharp minor pentatonic scale? I am. This is F sharp minor pentatonic scale, but it's also A major pentatonic scale. It just depends on the chord underneath it. That's what defines it. And so you always have to remember that. The chord underneath it is what gives it its context. So now you've got major pentatonic scale and minor pentatonic scale. The one last thing I want to talk about is bending notes. This comes up quite a bit. Which notes can I bend when I'm playing? So let's go back to minor pentatonic scale pattern 1. If we look at the 8th fret, 1st string, you can do a full bend there. And by the way, a full bend means where you start the bend, you're going up 2 frets. So that's the note you're trying to hit. Same is true on the 2nd string. You can do a full bend on that note as well. And then the same is true on the 7th fret 3rd string. You can do a full bend there. So each of these notes you can do a full bend on. Now there's other places you can bend, but I want to just keep this simple. These are the main areas for bending strings when it comes to playing lead guitar. So in your minor pentatonic scale pattern 1, you got a full bend there, you got a full bend there, and a full bend on the 1st string. I don't really bend past the 3rd string. Once you get into the bending on the 4th string, you can do it, but it becomes more problematic. Those are your main ones. Okay, in pattern 2, there's really only one note you can bend, and that would be this top right corner, at least from my vantage point. So that'd be 10th fret 1st string. You can do a full bend there. That's for your Albert King, right? When we come up to pattern 4, you have 2 notes you can bend. You have this top right corner from this one, which would be that 15th fret 1st string. You can do a full bend, and then the 15th fret 2nd string. Those are your bendable notes. And they're always in that sort of top right corner, if you think about it. I'm not really bending with my index finger. You could, but just to keep it simple, for the most part, those are the main ones. So in pattern 1, you've got those notes. In pattern 2, you've only got 1. And in pattern 4, you've got 2. And that covers your bendable notes for the most part. The same is true in the major pentatonic scale. Those same notes are bendable in terms of the pattern. So if we were to come down to pattern 1 of the major pentatonic scale for A, you would bend 5th fret 1st string, 5th fret 2nd string, and then 4th fret 3rd string. Those are bendable notes. Right? Same is true for pattern 2, only the top right corner. So in this case, it would be the 7th fret 1st string. And then the same is true for pattern 4, only the 12th fret 1st string and the 12th fret 2nd string. And so now you have the full picture. And by the way, for premium members, I do have practice material on practicing bending those notes. I have lots of practice stuff that goes with this. So if you're really serious about learning how to play this and really understanding it, you'll definitely want to check out a premium membership, even if it's just for this one lesson. I think there's so much value in just understanding this, because once you understand this pentatonic scale, you really have unlocked the fretboard in terms of being able to improvise easily. Okay, so the last thing I want to touch on is overlap. There's a few areas where the major pentatonic scale and the minor pentatonic scale overlap in real convenient areas for improvising and playing lead. And probably the most popular is when we talk about pattern 1 of our minor pentatonic scale. And again, we're still in the key of A here, but I also mentioned that pattern 2 of the major pentatonic scale was right here, right, in the same area. And so if you look at this area, that's major pentatonic scale, that's minor pentatonic scale. You start to see this when you can superimpose in your mind's eye the major pentatonic scale pattern 2 with minor pentatonic scale pattern 1, you have this little bluesy area where I can go back and forth between major and minor, and it sounds so nice. All of this is happening. You can see when I played that should make sense. You should understand that that's the bottom of pattern 2, right? And it's right there in the middle of your minor pentatonic scale. Now this is where it starts getting into other things, because some people see this as the chord itself. The chord itself is made up of that overlap in a way, or the overlap is made up of the chord. It depends on how you look at it, but they're the same notes either way. So that's the first area. The other area is the one that I just talked about, which is where I did the B.B. King lesson last week. And again, you can check that out. The full lesson on that would be EP435. And actually that lesson is going to make so much more sense if you understand this information. But basically you can come up here to pattern 4 of the major pentatonic scale, and then pattern 2 of the minor pentatonic scale. And they're in the same neighborhood, and they share this note. See this? Watch this one note. I can land on this note, and then over here I can go. Right? And obviously the reason that that note works is it's an A note, which is the key that we're in. So that's the other little sweet area, is the pattern 4 of the major pentatonic scale, pattern 2 of the minor pentatonic scale, that shared region here. It's very easy to pivot and go back and forth between the two. And you hear B.B. King doing it all the time, lots of other artists. So I mentioned one thing. I said the key, they shared the A note. I just want to end with this, the last little thing. When it comes to finding the key of the song you're in, the way that I learned to do that initially, if you don't know, if let's say you're playing along with your favorite record, well, you're not going to know what key that song is in necessarily. What you do is you just start with, by the way, start with a minor pentatonic scale. That's a good one to start with. Just start by getting that sound in your head first. But what I do is I play the song, and then I start with my open string. This is all done on the first string on the guitar. And I just walk up until I find a match. I just keep walking up the fretboard, and at some point one of the notes is going to click and it's going to make sense. Even if it's not exactly the same note as the chord that's happening, what you're looking for is the tonal center of the song. There's a certain note that just fits. And once you find it, if it were in the key of A, for example, if I find that, I should be able to come up here with my pinky and go ahead and trace out that minor pentatonic scale and start to get that bluesy sound. And if that happens, if I'm able to do that, then I know that I'm in the key of A, and I know my A major pentatonic scale is down here, and so forth. It unwraps the whole thing. But I have to start with that one note, the tonal center, just to find the key. And remember, you don't have to try and follow the chord changes when you're playing in the key of a song. You just stay in your pentatonic scale. You could just stay major pentatonic scale or minor pentatonic scale. However, if the song is in a minor key, you can only play the minor pentatonic scale. All right, so there's your pentatonic scale overview and the history of where they come from. But let's not end there. Let's go into the practice material. Now that we have that knowledge, come over to Active Melody and join me for part 2, where we'll go over the practice materials. There's lots of practice stuff. There's a jam track in a major key, a jam track in a minor key, and some practice material that go with that. There's also some standalone practice material that you don't need a jam track for, where we're going to practice which strings that you can bend and all of those fun things. So you can get that by going to activemelody.com, weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP436.